Next up, we have our newest PhD candidate, Thao Pham. She started, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago? Something like that. So she's just only beginning to understand the topic, but she's going to talk to you about it now.
Hi everyone, my name is Thao and thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Thao and I'm a PhD candidate from Swinburne University. And our menu, my supervisors are Associate Professor Charlie and Dr. Sasha. I'm researching into topic 6, what are the barriers to architects adopting new technology and the implications for individuals, teams, and managers. So in my presentation, I'll cover 5 main parts: motivations, challenges, initial discovery, where next, and your experience and discussion. I'm an architecture graduate from the University of Melbourne. So after graduate, I worked in the industry as different role: project coordinator, project assistant, and architecture graduate. I'm also a part-time member of Bio-Based Material Design Lab, operated from University of Western Australia, and my Cebu, a toy company focusing on building play kits and sustainable materials. And working in the industry, I observed a lot of miscommunication, misunderstanding, and unproductive time relating to version of drawings, architecture drawings, engineering drawings, and shop drawings for manufacturing. This is also indicated in the research by Deloitte commissioned by Autodesk Foundation, indicating architecture, engineering, and construction industry is the worst performer in the use of technology. This also parallel with the report from McKinsey and Company, stating the construction industry is the least efficient compared to the total economy and manufacturing. Although technology may not solve all the problem in the construction industry, real projects and research have proven the effectiveness when technology is adopted. So on the screen is the Ranscombe Bridge in Norway. It's the first 2,000-foot bridge to be constructed without any drawings and is entirely based on building information workflow. Cost overrun was reduced from 19% to 5% comparing to the drawing-based method. In an interview with Sweco Consultancy engineering company, who is also a designer of the bridge, stating the effectiveness when the 3D model is embedded with data, allow any changes to be really precise and efficient. Also in another report by Autodesk and Deloitte, they're indicating companies who are the leaders in advanced technology for data usage and analysis increase their profit growth rate by 50% comparing to those who just begin to adopt this technology. And also, they're indicating most of the interviewed company, 25% of the interviewed companies overrated their data capability compared to the data capability assessment framework. Therefore, it's crucial for architecture firms to move to transition from a blueprint-based workflow to a more automated workflow and improve their efficiency. However, there's still many barriers in the process of adopting this new technology. There are many research in the past have looked at the barriers for architects adopting new technology. The papers have looked at ranging from 1994 to 2023. The technology including BIM, immersive technology like AR, VR, AI, robotic, to more general new technology adoption or digital innovation. And to make sure this paper relevant to my topic, I always look for the keywords like challenges, barriers, implementation, or adoption. And the resource of these papers are from common research database like ScienceDirect, SprinkleLink. And on the screen is the map of the location of these papers, like some addressing the barriers as like a local issue and some addressing them as like a global issue. And from gathering the data, I came up with a graph to identify these barriers and the frequencies in the literature. So software incompatibility, human-related barrier, and cost are the most common barriers, followed by lack of regulations, software immaturity, management leadership, and organizational barriers. And other challenges also mentioned are training, customer needs, job disruption, unclear benefits, and industry fragmentation. So through the literature review, the initial gaps I found are: firstly, the qualitative and quantitative data analysis focus on interviewers at managerial levels. This missed out on the opportunity for the inputs of mid-level architects, BIM specialists, and graduates who work directly with the technology and manage the project as a more task-specific level. There are also opportunities to investigate deeper into each barrier with each different type of technology and how they fit into the organization structure and workflow. The literature also focused on the barrier at the time. Longitudinal studies could provide better insights into the existing barriers and evolving challenges in technology adoption. Besides, most prior research has only interviewed firms with potential of applying new technologies. There are opportunities to investigate companies who successfully implement these latest technology to compare with the traditional business models to see the differences. And finally, the existing literature focuses on the barrier, but there's no final goal in testing and applying these technologies into practice. The final goals could offset other challenges such as cost or human-related barriers. And so my initial step after the symposium is to keep looking into more literature. Investigate into companies who are the leaders in the field with new technologies, such as concrete 3D printing, BIM stage 3, robotic or digital twins, and see how the technologies are currently applied on the market. I will also look in research into the latest technology at architecture firms and to see if they have been used to their full potential, such as BIM level 3. And by comparing the two and the investigation into the business models, stakeholders, construction stages, and opportunities for new tech implementation, I can more precisely define my research directions and topic. And finally, I'm in the very early stage of my PhD project. I'm 1 month into my project. So we have came up with some question on the poster that we hope to have your input to help me define my research scope. So which barriers mentioned or not mentioned in the graph you suggest my research could explore further? This allows me to understand more about the barriers that you experience, care the most about, or the past research missed out so I could investigate further. And which technologies represent the greatest challenges to implement or have made the greatest impact on your firm? This question could relate to any other technology you believe my project should investigate for your future implementation. And which workflows and contexts with your experience have successfully implemented new technologies and what impacts do they have on your firm? This allows me to understand the process, stakeholders, and other factors influencing the adoption of new technology. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your listening.
Any questions from the audience?
Oh, thanks, Thao. Oh, that was loud. I really like the idea of addressing barriers in our industry. Sorry, Steve from Architectus, an industry partner. I'm along with Andy and Andrew at Cox and Andy at Grimshaw. You know, we are potentially leaders, leading edge in our industry. Our barriers are going to be very different to the barriers of maybe more mainstream architects in tier 2, tier 3 organizations. To what extent have you thought about how to gain access to the challenges of those industry partners or those people in industry?
So have I...
So to what extent are you going to not only assess our challenges and our barriers as tier 1 architects and designers versus a greater industry out there?
Yeah, I think there's also like a gap there. Like they normally research into like big tier 1 companies, but lack of like other like tier 2 and tier 3 companies to see what are the barriers. So I think my projects will cover like a whole range of like from tier 1 to tier 3 architecture companies. So yeah, like a broader scale, I suppose. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Thao.
Hello.
How you going?
Hi,
we haven't met yet, so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So I really liked how you structured the presentation very clearly, and this thing about the barriers is really powerful. One thing I did find was the barriers are already quite separated and identified, and I wonder whether there's actually some space between these barriers or interrelations that create new opportunities. Almost like barriers that exist that you possibly haven't identified yet by looking at the connections. I wonder if there's any work. Can you go to the one page before? I think you showed them all. Did you have a list of all the barriers?
This is the one.
Oh, that's them. Sorry, my fault. Sorry. I wrote them down as well, so I'm thinking about. I'm wondering, do any of these interrelate? Training and cost, or customer needs and disruption, etc.
Yeah, so these I pull out from the papers who like more relating research into more specific like human related factor or interior barrier or exterior barrier, which like more like client don't have a demand to use this technology. So like all of these papers address different aspects of these barriers that I just combine all of them to see the keywords, the repetition of that. But yeah, they all of the papers research like multi-dimensional of the barriers already. Yeah.
Drill down further.
Yeah.
As you get even more precise, maybe things will start to come clear, or patterns might start to emerge. So keep your eyes out for.
Yeah. Thank you. Do you have a question?
Hi, Thao. I'm Andy Watts from Grimshaw. I think this is a really fascinating topic, and it's something that's very close to my heart because, we're all about tackling barriers at the moment. Something I would suggest is I think everything you've got here is almost static. These are problems of the moment. And actually, I'd say one of the biggest barriers or topics that we're encountering, and I spoke to George about this over the lunch break, is that the industry is evolving so much.
Yeah.
We can talk about the constant squeeze on fees, on time, on things like that, but also the shape of the product that we deal with is changing. We no longer win a project and work on it for 6 years. We win a project and we work on it in packages of a few months at a time. And sometimes in some typologies, we'll have to retender every single stage. And because of that, we're chasing our own tails, trying to sort out how we do this work, that in itself becomes a barrier because we're so consumed with tackling these other issues. Yeah. So I think that's something that's worth considering, is that there is this constant evolution of what we do, and that in itself is a barrier. So I think that's just worthwhile considering.
Yeah, definitely. I'll have a more closer look into it. Thank you so much for your suggestion. Thank you.
Thao, thank you very much. I know you're still early stage. That's fine. One big hint for you is to find some time to talk to the people in the management lab.
Right.
Because their topics cross into this quite significantly. Yes. And I think you can help each other in that process, and also help the partner organizations much more clearly. Yeah. I want to come back to what Steve said on the notion of different tiers, and I want to change the definition there slightly. If you only study successful organizations, you get a very biased view. You actually need to study organizations that are not successful and see what their barriers were, because you'll learn a lot from them as well. Yeah. And that may be hard to find people to volunteer to tell you, hey, we weren't successful, but if you can find that, it would be really brilliant.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Just following on that one, I was sitting here thinking about all your keywords that you had listed and wondering how you organised your searches and what your Booleans were and which ones with which, and how you'd ever know whether you've been exhaustive. But I was also sort of thinking whether there's a possibility of a sort of negative search, because we all make phenomenal claims about what we are doing and how successful we are, and whether there's a researcher's way of reading between the lines on that, because just as another way of sort of digging through the heap and looking at what's not happening and why. Yeah.
I really like that, Jane, a researcher's way of reading between the lines.
Just to add to what George said, and maybe a few other people, Tier 1 architects I think, are large enough to have unsuccessful projects and survive. So yeah, I'm quite happy to put my hand up and say I think there's quite a lot of failures in what we've done, especially we're quite even like we do jump into the deep end with some of these types of things, and we have the safety net to put up with a failure there. So there are, I think, quite a lot of lessons learnt in this. There are some successes, but mostly they're failures, I think. And one of
You're allowed to say that.
I am. I think we're here in a nice, safe environment, right? It's not like I'm being recorded right now. I know it's a joke. One thing I just I'm really intrigued with though is the fourth point in this list, the barriers identified, the lack of regulations, because what I've discovered, or what I've in my humble opinion, I think it's actually the current regulations that are restricting us and actually creating these barriers. So when you say lack of regulation, do you mean, like, is it that they haven't evolved to be modern, or is it because at the moment it's very strict and we can submit a model, and usually builders work off models. Like if I use your bridge as an example, they will use our models, but when we get sued, they'll use our drawings, right? So that's why we have 1,000 drawings and we put all that effort into it, is because we need to protect ourselves, and it's through those regulations that we get sued.
So the regulation is more like in the research they define as like more support from the government.
Yeah.
And I think in England they have something similar to our manuals called Digital Build Britain. So it's also like a 5 years program that they ran, and they also have a whole regulation of like, how can we support the architecture firm engineer working on the same model, BIM level 3 together. So yeah, that is what the regulations, like more supporting from the government side. Yeah.
Sean from the Management Lab. So looking at your list of barriers, and I'm thinking from the perspective of the practitioners. So you're going to spend the next 3.5 years talking to people and collect a longer list of barriers. And then after that, you'll write your papers and say, thank you very much for your list of barriers. I'm just thinking from their perspective, is there a possibility for you to do something for them from the perspective of barrier identification mechanism or system and barrier monitoring, so that the inter-department or inter-teams can benefit from? Just a thought.
Yeah. Thank you. So this is the conversation I had with my supervisors like quite a few times. Like I want to do more than just the barriers, because there are a lot of research in the past talking about these barriers as well. So I want to make like a literature review on these barriers, synthesize it into a really critical point, and then I'll leverage it from there. So how can they use this barrier to maybe streamlines their workflow, or what is more than that? And
the user of your barrier monitoring system and barrier reporting system could be the internal trainers. Right, so they would have that training. Every year they will come and talk about interdepartmental collaboration and then why certain things worked and so on. So possibly you may want to start your conversation with who might be potential users of your barrier knowledge and barrier related work.
Yes.
And to see if you can, from day one, already have a very clear idea how you could be benefiting the practitioner or the partners.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I had one more question over here.
So I'm someone who's tried and failed many times to implement technology in AEC firms. And on behalf of such nameless people like myself, those of us who have also worked among software developers, we've got used to working in Agile. And then when we come back to ASC, we find people don't work like that. They're still caught up in a waterfall mentality. it's quite a shock. So one place that you might like to look is at software development and the kind of tradition of, where did Agile start about 20 years ago, and how they strayed away from those principles and kind of built up all this bullshit as the corporates have taken over it. So one thing I've come across recently is called Shape Up, which is trying to go back to those principles and add some more stuff. So that's a bit of a pointer for you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your really interesting presentation. Really interesting. Oh, that wasn't me. Okay, good. Okay, technology. Anyway, So one thing actually I find interesting as well is, and I feel like that I would say that could be part of your PhD, or might have to be part of your PhD. I don't know. Could be. Let's maybe. In which way there is a bias in what we see as barriers and to technology adoption. Also, having worked on BIM projects, in practice, and I know you showed that one as an example of, the efficiency and so. But all I would say is the assumption is sort of that, the actual offices, they don't know yet how to do it right. They don't yet, have the abilities, skills, whatever, to do it level 5 or whatever. But there might actually be good reasons why they don't use it. And I mean, even when working with students, we see the limitations of BIM, and we see also the strengths, right? But we also see the limitations. And often, if you listen to Autodesk or so, they will tell you, yes, that's what you should be doing, is the future. But they don't, how do they know the future? Oops, sorry. How do they know the future? They're selling a product, right? And so of course they will tell you, yes, we all need to be level 5. But there are lots of other technologies, right, that are emerging, and offices are often, people on the ground, they are often smart in the way they use the right tools for the right jobs and so on. Maybe agile, I don't know. But basically, I would also interrogate their own biases in the project, and maybe not necessarily assume that the people you're interviewing, that they're not yet at the right level, right? Maybe they are also using technology that might actually be the future, or But so sorry if that's. I think it's not 100% clear, but I think maybe that's part of the project, the kind of bias that's built in, but how could that also inform? How could their expertise maybe also inform what are barriers, but also what are the things that maybe that are the future that, we should be working towards. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting perspective. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Oh, one more? Is that? Nope. Great. Thank you, Thao.